Alrighty, we're going to learn about complex sentences. So we talked a little bit previously about compound sentences, and now we're going to look at sentences that are more complex. So if you'll go ahead and write your name at the top. A complex sentence is made up of a simple sentence and a dependent clause, or a group of words that has a subject and a predicate. The two parts are joined by a subordinating conjunction such as after, although, because, before, until, if, since, and while. So those are a lot of options. Let's read them over one more time. After, although, because, before, until, if, since, and while. Some of these sound like time words, right? That might help you to remember after, before, until, since, right? Those are all time words. So let's look at an example. The snake slithered under a rock before the sun became too hot. There's no comma there, right? We just see it's called a subordinating conjunction. We see the subordinating conjunction before. No commas, and this is the simple sentence, the snake slithered under a rock, and this is the sun became too hot. That's a dependent clause. So, let's look below. Read each complex sentence. Underline the simple sentence once. Underline the dependent clause twice. Circle the subordinating conjunction that joins the two. I would say let's do that first. Let's circle the subordinating conjunction. So we have, although Rodney loved most animals, comma, he didn't like snakes. Well, I think although is right here, right? And although was on our list up here. So Rodney loved most animals, he didn't like snakes. I think the second one is the dependent clause, right? So we are going to, he didn't like animals is the simple sentence, and then we're going to underline the dependent clause twice. Okay? Let's look at the next one. Snakes startled him because they moved so quickly. I recognize because right away. So I'm going to circle as because. And we have the simple sentence, snakes startled him. And then we have because they moved so quickly is the dependent clause. He ran away from a snake in the grass, though he knew it wasn't poisonous. Well, I think though, although is the same as though. So I would guess that this would be the simple sentence, and this would be the dependent clause. Okay. I'm going to give you a minute to look at review the last one on your own. See what you think. And then we'll correct it together. Okay. So he learned more about the snake after he saw it. After was one of our words, right? After, yes. So we're going to circle that. He saw it is the dependent clause, and this is our simple sentence. And the reason why it's a dependent clause is because it's dependent on this word right here. If the word wasn't here, if that subordinating conjunction wasn't there, it would be a complete sentence. He saw it is a complete sentence. But this word makes it so that it's not really a complete sentence. It's a dependent clause. It's dependent on this word. Okay, let's look at numbers 5 through 8. Write a complete sentence by adding a simple sentence to the dependent clause. Put a comma between the two parts of the complex sentence. Okay, so here we go. Because that snake is poisonous, right? So here's our because, that's our subordinating conjunction. Because that snake is poisonous, comma, I had to go to the emergency room, or I went to the emergency room. Normally I would make us write this whole thing out, but the line isn't big enough and the paper's not big enough. So I'm okay with you just putting a comma here and filling in what you're going to write for the rest. Although this snake is large, let's see. Although this snake is large, we're keeping it in our classroom. Okay, next one is while you are at the zoo, I'm going to write, please check on the elephants. Actually, I'm going to say hippos because I love hippos. I don't know if you guys are a fan of Fiona, the hippo that is at I think it's at the Cincinnati Zoo. She's at the Cincinnati Zoo and she was born prematurely. She was really tiny. They thought she was going to die. She was a little tiny hippo. And they've been taking care of her and she's gaining weight, and they have Fiona videos all over the internet, and I love watching them because I love hippos. After you look at the snake exhibit, we'll go get snacks. We'll go get lunch at the cafe. We'll call it the Zoo Cafe. All right, so these were all dependent clauses because they started with these words. Because, although, while, after, right? If that was not there, they would be complete sentences. Okay? They're just called a dependent clause because of this word. We're never really going to start a sentence with because. This is a really bad habit. Bad. Okay, when you guys do it, I correct it on your papers. So it's not really appropriate to start a sentence with because. However, that being said, there is more information, so it does make it a complete sentence. If you just said, because that snake is poisonous, that would not be a complete sentence. Because we added the rest on here, it's okay. But this is not great. We don't really like seeing sentences that start with because. It's generally not well thought of. All right. I feel like we did a pretty good job figuring out about complex sentences, subordinating conjunctions, and dependent clauses. And that's a mouthful of things that we had to learn and work on today. So hopefully you learned a little bit more about writing more complicated sentences. Hasta la vista.